She left the garage door halfway open that night. It creaked and groaned in the wind like a jaw that couldn't decide if it wanted to bite down or yawn. That's what I remember most about that evening, not her perfume, not the silence at the dinner table, not even the way her eyes barely flicked toward me before she grabbed her purse. No, just that stupid, half-open garage door and the echo it made as she drove away. I didn't close it. I just stood at the top of the stairs, staring through the shadowed rectangle, letting the cold come in, letting the air wrap around my ankles like smoke from a fire I didn't start. Earlier that same day, she'd left a note on the counter. Not a text, not a phone call. A note. I need to remember who I am. Please don't wait up. No name. No, love, Maureen. Just that single sentence written in lowercase, like it didn't deserve weight. Like I didn't deserve explanation. She'd said a few weeks ago that she wasn't happy. Just like that. Like she was commenting on a sandwich that didn't have enough mustard. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She just dropped it in the middle of our Tuesday morning coffee routine while Max was upstairs brushing his teeth. I don't feel happy anymore, Everett. I feel invisible. Invisible. As if all the dinners, all the hand-holding, all the awkward attempts to dance in the living room meant nothing. And maybe they didn't. Because I stayed. I listened. I gave her space. I held my tongue every time I wanted to scream. What about me? What about how I feel? But I didn't scream. I just folded. And now, there I was, staring into the night through a half-open garage door, wondering if she was with him. The guy who laughs a little too loud at her jokes. The guy from her new office. The guy whose name she said once in her sleep. I remember because she never said my name like that anymore. I walked downstairs. I stood in that garage. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just stood there, holding her note in one hand, like it might change if I squeezed hard enough. I looked around. Something inside me finally went quiet. So I did something I never thought I would do. I closed the garage door. I turned off the porch light. I deleted her contact. And I sat in the dark, not to wait, but to let her go. But that's when it began. That's when the knocking started. At first, I thought the knocking was just in my head. You know that kind of phantom sound your brain invents when it's too quiet? I'd heard them before, echoes of imagined footsteps, the fridge humming like it's sighing. But this knock was real. Sharp, deliberate, almost hesitant. 3 slow taps on the front door. It was 1:12 a.m. I didn't move right away. I just sat there in the living room, the only light coming from the street lamp outside casting long shadows across the floor. The knock came again. A little firmer this time. My chest tightened. I wasn't scared. I was embarrassed. Because some pathetic piece of me hoped it was her. That maybe Maureen had changed her mind, had come back to say she didn't need to remember who she was, because she remembered us. I opened the door. It wasn't her. It was Max. My son. 14, disheveled, pajama-clad, standing there with his arms crossed and a look on his face that I'll never forget. You locked the front door, he said. I was downstairs playing Xbox, and I went out to get my charger from Mom's car. You locked me out. I blinked. I didn't even know he was awake. I mumbled some stupid apology, let him in, and watched him disappear up the stairs without another word. But the damage was done. I stood there frozen, heart pounding, realizing I'd let myself drift into such a fog of emotional fogginess that I literally locked my own kid outside. Maureen would have noticed. Or at least, she used to. I couldn't sleep after that. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. Every creak of the wood sounded like regret. Every minute that passed made me wonder where she was. I imagined her with him, probably laughing at things I'd never say. Maybe drinking wine, maybe crying, maybe being held in a way I forgot how to do. Then around 2:26 a.m., the garage door opened again. This time slowly, cautiously, like someone was trying not to wake the house. She walked in without looking at me. Hair messy, eyes red, wearing the same coat she left in. She went straight to the kitchen, grabbed a glass of water, and sat down at the counter. I waited. I watched. And finally, I asked in a voice so hoarse I didn't recognize it, "Did you find what you were looking for?" She didn't answer at first. Just stared into the glass like the answer was somewhere near the bottom. Then, softly, she said, "I thought I would feel something. Clarity, maybe. Or guilt. Or relief. But I just felt empty." "Was it him?" I asked. I didn't want to. But I had to. She looked up. "No. I didn't go to him. I drove around. Sat in a parking lot. Thought about calling my sister. Didn't. I didn't believe her. Not fully. There was something in her voice, shaky but too rehearsed. Still, I nodded. Because that's what I do. I nod. I hold my breath. I wait. She stood up, walked past me, and paused by the stairs. You stopped chasing me, she said. And I realized how far away I'd already gone. Then she climbed the stairs. Quietly, like a stranger trying not to wake the people she once knew. I stayed there until dawn. I didn't cry. I didn't sleep. I just watched the light crawl up the walls, wondering when silence stopped meaning peace. And the worst part? Some tiny, aching part of me still wanted her to turn around and come back downstairs. To hold me. To say it was all just a nightmare. That I mattered again. But she didn't. She closed our bedroom door without a sound. I didn't go up to the bedroom for 3 days. Not once. I slept on the couch, showered in the guest bathroom, even dressed in the laundry room like some pitiful house ghost afraid to cross the threshold. I told Max I was doing some insulation work up in the attic and didn't want to disturb things upstairs, but I think he knew I was lying. The way he looked at me, with that half-pity, half-resignation glare, I could see he'd already learned to navigate around sadness like it was furniture we no longer had room for. Maureen and I barely spoke. She came down in the mornings like a guest at a mediocre Airbnb. Grabbed coffee, scrolled her phone, nodded when I asked if she wanted toast. She didn't ask where I'd slept. She didn't comment on my sunken eyes or the fact I now flinched every time my phone buzzed. I'd started imagining messages that weren't there. My hands would tremble reaching for phantom texts from her. Not the woman sipping coffee across from me, but the one I remembered, the one who used to send me dumb memes and miss you notes during lunch breaks. And then came Sunday. That morning, she made breakfast. Real breakfast. Bacon, eggs, toast, orange juice, the works. I woke to the smell and for a moment, I felt disoriented, like I'd traveled back in time before everything cracked. But when I walked into the kitchen, the illusion collapsed. She didn't smile when she saw me. She didn't offer a plate. She just said, flatly, "There's food if you want it," and then sat down and started eating alone. I sat across from her, trying to read her face, but it was like looking into a lake with no bottom. She chewed slowly, deliberately. Then, without lifting her eyes, she said, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" The question hit me like a slap. I didn't answer. She looked up. "I need to know, Everett. I need to know if what we have is still a thing. Because, if it's not, I have to start figuring things out." That phrase, figuring things out, it sounded surgical. Cold. Like she was prepping to amputate me from her life, and just wanted to know if I'd scream during the procedure. I tried to say something meaningful. I really did. But all that came out was, "I don't know how to trust you anymore." And then something happened I hadn't seen in months. She started crying. Not sobbing. Not a dramatic meltdown. Just quiet tears streaming down her face like a faucet someone forgot to shut off. She didn't wipe them away. She didn't excuse herself. She just stared down at her plate while her eggs went cold and said, "I thought leaving would make me feel alive again." But it didn't. It made everything darker. I wanted to believe her. But I still didn't know where she'd gone that night. I still didn't know whose name she said in her sleep 2 weeks ago. I still didn't know why her gym bag had an extra toothbrush in it. So I said nothing. I stood up, rinsed my coffee cup in the sink, and left the house without a word. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't breathe in that kitchen anymore. I drove aimlessly for hours. No music. No destination. Just the engine humming beneath me and my thoughts screaming over it. I passed the same gas station 3 times before realizing I was just circling the outskirts of town. I didn't even stop for coffee. That's how if I was, me, the guy who once turned the car around because a drive-thru forgot my cream. Around noon, I ended up at this small lake about 20 minutes out, the one Maureen and I used to go to before Max was born. We used to sneak out there on weekday afternoons and skip rocks until the sun dipped. It was never a big deal kind of place, but it had this quiet. That kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, it feels safe. Back then, I thought it was her that made it feel like that. But as I sat on that same weathered bench, knees shaking, I realized the silence was now unbearable. Like the space left behind when someone exits mid-sentence. I pulled out my phone. Scrolled up through old messages from her. Things like, "Get almond milk," not the weird one. Or, "You're still my favorite person, don't forget that." That one stung the most. She'd sent that after one of my awful work presentations bombed. I remember how she squeezed my hand afterward like she believed it, like she really saw me. And now? She was breaking eggs like nothing had happened, asking if I could forgive her over toast and juice. Like forgiveness was something you could order off a menu and wait 10 minutes for. While I sat there, a text came in. From a number I didn't recognize. Hey, I heard what happened. You okay? No name. Just that. I stared at it. My heart did this awkward flip. Part of me wondered if Maureen had already started laying the groundwork. Was someone on her side of things reaching out? A mutual friend? Her sister? I didn't reply. I just shut off the phone and dropped it on the bench beside me. I didn't want new players in this already broken story. I just wanted answers. Real ones. I didn't go home right away. I sat at that lake until the wind picked up and the clouds darkened. It was only then I realized how badly I'd been shaking. Not from the cold. From something else. Anger. Maybe. Or fear. Or that deep, rotting sensation that I'd allowed too much to slide for too long, and now I couldn't find the edge of myself anymore. When I finally pulled into our driveway, the porch light was on, and something felt wrong. It took me a second to figure it out, but the car wasn't in the garage. Hers. Gone again. I walked inside and found Max on the couch, headphones on, controller in hand, face glued to some strategy game. He looked up, surprised to see me, and said, "Mom said she needed air. Said she'd be back soon." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and went upstairs, straight to our room. And that's when I saw it. The note. Same handwriting. Same notepad. Just like before. I didn't plan to feel this confused again. "I'm sorry." No explanation. No location. Just another middle-of-the-road apology that left more questions than answers. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to keep my breathing steady. My eyes landed on her gym bag beside the dresser. I never went through her things. I always thought that made you the bad guy. The desperate one. The paranoid husband who couldn't let go. But I opened it anyway. Inside, everything looked ordinary at first. Leggings, deodorant, hair ties. But in the side pocket, I found a small bottle of unfamiliar cologne. Not perfume. Cologne. Men's. Half empty. And underneath it, a movie stub. 2 nights ago. Late show. She hadn't been sitting in a parking lot. She hadn't been driving around reflecting. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I sat there holding the stub like it was a burning coal. My chest got tight, and for the first time since this all started, I said something out loud. Not a scream. Not a sob. Just one sentence, whispered into our empty bedroom. "You lied to me again." And the worst part? I wasn't even surprised. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there, fully dressed, curled up on top of the bed like a guest overstaying his welcome in his own home. Every creak of the walls, every passing car outside made me flinch, made me wonder if she'd finally come back, or worse, if she wouldn't. I kept replaying the words on the note. I didn't plan to feel this confused again. Like it was some kind of defense. Like confusion was permission to slip away again, to keep me suspended in this half-existence where I wasn't quite abandoned, but never truly chosen either. Around 3 a.m., I got up. I wandered into the hallway, stared at our family photos for a long time. There was one of us at the beach. Max was maybe 9, buried in sand up to his neck, laughing. Maureen had her hand on my chest in that photo, leaning toward me, smiling in this soft, real way I hadn't seen in years. Back then, we were still holding hands without noticing. Back then, she used to reach for me. I went downstairs and sat on the couch, the same one where I'd been sleeping lately. Max's backpack was on the floor beside it, half-zipped. One of his notebooks had slipped out. I picked it up, not to snoop, just searching for something to ground me. I opened it, and I found a page covered in tight handwriting, Max's journal, apparently. He must have been venting, not realizing it had spilled into his homework. They think I don't know, but I know. Mom's hiding something and Dad's breaking a little more every day. I hate how quiet the house is. I hate pretending it's normal. Sometimes I wish they'd just yell at each other and get it over with. I sat there with that page in my hands, the words blurring as tears finally came. Not loud, not messy, just quiet, exhausted tears. Because my son had been watching all of this, absorbing it like poison, and we were so busy sinking we didn't even notice he was going down with us. The front door opened just after 4 a.m. I heard her take her shoes off softly, like she thought I might be asleep. She tiptoed down the hall, keys jingling, purse strap creaking. She didn't see me at first. I said, "Where were you?" She froze. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just asked, flatly, calmly, like I was reading a question off a medical form. Maureen turned slowly and looked at me like she was caught sleepwalking. "I needed space," she said again. Always with the space. I went to think. I stood up and walked toward her. I wasn't angry. I was just done playing dumb. "I found the movie stub in your bag," I said. "And the cologne." For a second, I thought she might deny it. that she might dig into some script about a misunderstanding. But instead, her face crumbled. Not guilt, not remorse, just collapse. She lowered her head and let out this shaky breath like someone caught mid-fall. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. That sentence shattered me in ways I didn't expect. Didn't mean for it to go this far. So it had gone far. Not some emotional connection. Not a moment of confusion. She had crossed a line, one she knew she couldn't uncross. And yet she still came home. Still made breakfast. Still pretended to be lost instead of gone. "Is it him?" I asked. She nodded once. "I don't even know his name." "I still don't?" "Some man who swooped in during the wreckage, who got the version of her that was chasing freedom while I was trying to hold our family together. He got her laughter. He got her attention. And I got the silence. I ended it," she said quietly. "A while ago. It's been over." But her voice trembled too much. Her eyes didn't meet mine. And I knew she was lying. Again, I walked past her without saying another word. I went upstairs and closed the bedroom door behind me, not to sleep, but to block out the world. I don't know how long I stood there, hands gripping the doorknob, forehead resting against the wood. But I knew this. Something had broken. Not just trust. Not just love. Something in me. And I didn't know if it could ever be pieced back together. The next morning didn't feel like a new day. It felt like an extension of the same nightmare I hadn't woken up from in months. I got Max off to school like a robot. Coffee in his thermos, cereal on the table, reminders about practice. He looked at me for a long time as he slipped on his backpack. I could tell he wanted to ask something. I just smiled like everything was fine. When he closed the door behind him, that smile dropped so fast it felt like a mask crashing to the floor. Maureen was in the kitchen again, still wearing the same sweater from the night before. Her hair tied up like she'd just thrown it together out of habit. She didn't say good morning, just handed me a mug of coffee like that was some form of apology. I stared at it, didn't take it. Instead, I asked, "Do you love him?" She blinked, surprised I went there so directly. "I don't know," she whispered. That answer hurt more than a yes. Not because I wanted her to say she loved him, but because I realized how much I didn't matter in the equation anymore. She wasn't sure. She wasn't even trying to be sure. She had broken something sacred, and all she had to offer in return was uncertainty and lukewarm coffee. I walked past her again. I was getting good at that, moving through the house like a ghost, slipping through the cracks of conversations we didn't have. I went into our bedroom, not to grab clothes or clean up, but to look at myself in the mirror. Really look. I hadn't shaved in days. Maybe longer. I couldn't remember the last time I'd gotten a full night's sleep. My eyes were swollen. My posture slumped like I'd aged 10 years. I touched my face and muttered under my breath, "Who are you?" And then I saw it, sitting on the dresser. The old ring box. She had kept it, strangely. Not where we used to keep our rings together, not in a drawer or jewelry case. Just sitting there like a museum piece no one had bothered to dust. I opened it. Inside was my wedding band. I'd taken it off weeks ago when I couldn't bear the weight of the lie anymore. And beneath the band, folded neatly like a secret, was a photo. The three of us, Maureen, Max, and me, at his 5th grade science fair. Max's hair was a mess, gelled up into some failed volcano experiment. Maureen was laughing, her arm hooked around my neck. I was holding up his award ribbon like it was a trophy from the Super Bowl. That photo wrecked me, because I could remember what it felt like in that moment. The warmth, the safety, the yes of it all. And now I was staring at the past like it was a ghost I couldn't touch. I went back downstairs. She was still sitting there, looking out the window. "Why didn't you just leave?" I asked. She turned slowly. "Because I didn't want to break Max. Because I thought maybe if I just waited long enough, things would make sense again." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was tragic. "You didn't want to break Max?" I said, louder now. "You think sneaking around, lying, gaslighting me, that somehow protected him?" Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't know what else to do. "You could have told the truth," I snapped. "You could have said you wanted out. You could have walked out the door instead of coming back and pretending this was still a home." She opened her mouth, but I didn't let her speak. "I found the gym receipts. I know they stopped 2 months ago. I know you weren't going there anymore. You kept dressing like you were headed to yoga, but you weren't. So where were you going, Maureen? Who were you with when I was cooking dinner, when I was folding laundry, when I was teaching Max algebra while you were getting clarity?" The house fell into a silence so thick it felt alive. She lowered her eyes. And for the first time since all of this began, I saw something in her that almost resembled shame. But it was too late. Something inside me had changed. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about erosion. She hadn't just cheated. She had allowed our love to rot, piece by piece, with every excuse, every lie, every moment she chose someone else over her family. I'm done, I said. Not in anger, not in bitterness. Just done. She looked up, panicked now. What do you mean? I mean you don't get to decide how this ends anymore. I walked upstairs, grabbed my duffel bag, and started packing. I didn't even know where I was going yet. But I couldn't stay in a place where truth had become a foreign language. And as I zipped the bag, I heard it again. The faint sound of her crying downstairs. Only this time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't make a scene. I just walked out. Left the house I helped build, the one with crooked light switches I installed myself, the dent in the hallway where Max rode his scooter too fast, the smudges on the living room wall that never quite washed off. I left all of it behind, like stepping away from a crime scene I didn't commit. It was raining, of course it was. The kind of rain that feels less like weather and more like mockery. I stood on the front porch for a few seconds, bag slung over my shoulder, her crying barely audible through the front door. Part of me wanted to turn around. Not for her. For Max. For the version of me that still believed I could fix things by simply staying put. But I didn't. I got into my car and drove to my cousin's place on the edge of town. Clay. He's 5 years younger, still single, still living like a frat boy with expired condiments and laundry mountains in every room. He didn't ask questions when I showed up. Just handed me a beer and pointed to the pull-out couch. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, the sound of his TV murmuring through the wall. But my brain wasn't there. It was still in the driveway, watching my life unravel with every step I took away from it. The next morning, I turned on my phone to find 5 missed calls from Maureen, 2 voicemails, and a text. You're overreacting. We can talk. Please come home. Don't do this to Max. The audacity of that last sentence made my jaw clench. Don't do this to Max. As if I hadn't spent months swallowing broken glass to hold our family together while she was sneaking off into shadows. As if she was the victim now, and I was the one lighting matches on the wreckage. I didn't reply. Instead, I went out. Drove around for hours again, but this time, I wasn't numb. I was thinking, sharpening, piecing things together like a man waking up after surgery and finally realizing which organs were missing. I stopped by my office to pick up some documents, and that's when I saw her. Not Maureen. Her friend Margot, the one who'd always been a little too neutral about everything. I'd suspected for a while that she knew more than she let on. I approached her in the parking lot. She looked startled, like she'd seen a ghost. I didn't smile. How long did you know? Margot glanced around like the sky might offer her a better answer. Everett, I didn't. How long? I repeated. She sighed, leaning against her car door. A few months. Maybe longer. But it wasn't my place. I laughed, bitterly. Not your place? You watched my wife unravel our marriage and couldn't be bothered to send a single warning flare. She told me she ended it. I thought she was trying to work things out with you. You knew she was sleeping with someone else. You knew. And you let me sit across from her every night like a fool. Margot didn't argue. She didn't even apologize. She just said she didn't know what she wanted. She kept saying she was unhappy. There it was again. That word. Unhappy. It had become the shield for every selfish decision she made. Unhappy with the marriage. Unhappy with herself. Unhappy with a life she helped build but refused to repair. And I had to suffer for it. I had to wear the guilt while she wore the confusion like perfume. I drove straight to my lawyer's office. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about punishment. It was about clarity. For the first time in months, I knew exactly what I needed to do. When I walked back into the house that evening, yes, I went back. It wasn't to reconcile. It was to reclaim my side of the story. She looked up from the couch, startled, mascara smeared, face pale like she'd seen a ghost too. I placed the envelope on the coffee table. She didn't open it. She didn't have to. I'll come by this weekend for my things, I said. Max can stay here. I'm not going to pull him into this mess. She stood, voice trembling. You're seriously doing this? I should have done it months ago. Her expression twisted. You're giving up on us? I leaned in just slightly. No, you gave up on us. I'm just finally letting go. She started crying again, sobbing this time, as if the reality had finally caught up to her. As if the space she so desperately wanted now felt like a coffin. I walked out again. And this time, I didn't look back. It's been 7 weeks. 7 weeks since I stood in that living room and told her I was done. 7 weeks since I slid that envelope onto the table and walked out with my spine straight for the first time in years. It's strange how time moves after something breaks. Some days crawl, some vanish. But slowly, day by day, I began stitching myself back together. The first few days were hard. The nights were the worst. I'd stare at the ceiling in Clay's guest room, listening to the hum of his ancient fridge, feeling the shape of the emptiness left behind. I missed Max more than I could admit out loud. Missed the routine, the small laughs, the quiet comfort of familiarity, even if that comfort had become poisoned. But then something started to shift. It was subtle at first. A full night of sleep without waking up anxious. Coffee that actually tasted like something again. A song playing in the car that made me tap my fingers on the wheel instead of spiraling into memory. I didn't expect healing to come in waves like that. I thought it would be one grand epiphany. But no, it came quietly, through the details. Max and I started meeting regularly. Weekends at first. He was hesitant, withdrawn, like he didn't know which version of me to expect. But we fell into a rhythm. Bowling on Saturdays, pancakes on Sunday mornings. I listened more, talked less, and slowly, he opened back up. Told me about his classes, his crush, how he was scared when he saw the bags packed that night, but didn't want to admit it. I told him the truth in a way that didn't scar. I said sometimes adults forget how to love each other properly. Sometimes we confuse staying with saving. But none of it was his fault. None of it ever would be. As for Maureen, she stayed in the house. She apologized again, several times, in person, in writing, through Max. And this time, it wasn't performative. It wasn't laced with manipulation or desperation. She owned it, admitted the damage, accepted the distance. She even asked if I wanted her to move out. And I surprised myself by saying no. Not because I wanted to be close to her, but because Max deserved a sense of stability. The plan was already in motion to sell the house. I'd found a small 2-bedroom place near the park. Close enough for Max to visit often, far enough to breathe on my own. This past weekend, we moved the last of my things out. Maureen and I stood in the driveway one final time. The same driveway where I'd once frozen, watching her drive off into the night. She handed me an envelope, one of Max's drawings. It was the three of us, stick figures under a crooked sun, but we were all smiling. Above us, he'd written in shaky, 8th grade letters, "It's okay to still love people from far away." I looked up. She was already crying. "I hope you find peace, Everett," she said. "I already am," I told her. And I meant it. Now I sit here, writing this from my new place. The walls are still bare, the air still smells like cardboard and new paint. But there's a softness to the silence I never thought I'd feel again. I don't hate her. I don't love her either. Not like before. But I'm grateful for what we had. Grateful for the lesson. Grateful to know that letting go isn't the same as losing. It's how we make space for something better. Max is coming over this weekend. We're building a bookshelf together. He wants to fill it with graphic novels and that weird encyclopedia on reptiles he keeps quoting. And me? I'm finally building something of my own again. For the first time in a long time, I'm not chasing. I'm not breaking. I'm just becoming. And that's more than enough.